NFL football is officially underway as the Buffalo Bills prepare to kick off their preseason against the Indianapolis Colts. There are plenty of positional battles and potential cuts to speak on, so stick around, join the conversation. This is the Friday Night Forecast.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming to rep the East. Buffalo bat with a vengeance, we resurrected the team, man, we dangerous. Watch for these horns, they lacerate and cut. We don't play no game while we play this game, no, I play in us. You know what it's about, you made me wanna shout. They said to take it now, we took another route. Deuces to the drought, play through all the doubters, finger pointing and laughing. The ones that was talking that trash are the same ones circling wagons, we ain't having it. Dominate divisions ever since we put the Allen in. Knocks the competition out the stadium like hammer fist. Stephon Diggs a grave and he pays respects to the cornerbacks that can't cover quickness, then he catches it. In 1995 to 2020, break the streak. Kept the faith in every season for the team, cause I believe. Taught me no matter how many times you're down, do not accept defeat. Feel like number 17. You got me feeling like I'm Josh Allen, yeah. What? You got me feeling like I'm Josh. Okay. You got me feeling like I'm Josh Allen, yeah. Josh. Yeah. Got me feeling like I'm who? Josh. Yeah. Josh Allen. Yeah. Succeed the most in the freezing cold. Break a couple tables in a parking lot with sleet and snow. Yeah. Put the work in with Sean McDermott, a worthy coach. Y'all can get the hands like a Wilson ball when it's Beasley thrown. Yeah. Got so many yards to the point we owning property. I remember haters talking foolish with that gossiping, but they don't want it with Buffalo. Cause when the winter storm hits, they'll be stuck with nowhere to go. Let's play Micah hide and seek. We'll find a week up on the field. Say hike and we'll unleash the lights to Trey White and Evans. All kinds of D. Back in the driver's seat, the Singletary. He's sprinting scary to carry the ball through the plane. Embarrass these adversaries. Prepare to be victimized. We gave New England pats up on their back. Told New York to jet. They left the scene and packed their bags. Went fishing for some dolphins. Left them beats up on the sand. AFC East champs. You got me feeling like I'm Josh Allen, yeah. What? You got me feeling like I'm Josh. Okay. You got me feeling like I'm Josh Allen, yeah. Josh. Got me feeling like I'm who? Josh. Yeah. Josh Allen.
Happy Friday, Bills Mafia. Welcome back, and welcome to another episode of the Friday Night Forecast on the Cold Front Report. I am your host, Travis Blakesley. Thank you for tuning in tonight. As always, please like, share, and show some love. And if you're on YouTube, it wouldn't hurt to subscribe to stay up to date with all of the Bills-related news here on the Cold Front Report. Remember, you can find any podcasts from myself, Jeremy, and the other guys by searching the Cold Front Report at any point after the show. Joining me, we got my friend Cody NY. Cody, it's been a long time, been a long off season. I don't know about you, but I still haven't watched that division game full. That's always the first question I go to, man. How you been?
Yeah, doing well. Trying to enjoy the last bit of summer that we got here. 13 seconds, yeah. I to be honest with you, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about it the last couple months, and diving right back into this is the first thing that we got to bring up. So, unfortunately, that's how our season ended, and but we got a new season to start, and let's go. I'm ready.
Every end is a new beginning, right?
Right.
All right. So why don't we just get into what happened while we were away? It's been a long time. Obviously, Von Miller signed. That's a big splash. Something that this team has been looking for, that big guy to do what Jerry Hughes was supposed to do. Reggie Gilliam signs a new contract. He's a guy who always seems to be on that roster bubble. Everyone seems to forget about him, but he can do so many things for you. You got guys like Josh Allen, who's already obviously not playing. What about some other guys? Who do you think we are going to see sit this first preseason game?
Well, we'll see the usual suspects. I think that most people will probably, the casual fan can probably put a finger on, and Diggs and Von Miller, Milano, Edmonds. Those guys aren't going to get much run. Then we got to look at the offensive line. A couple guys that are beat up. Spencer Brown was out all training camp until the end there. Mitch Morse, he's got a history of concussions. He's a proven veteran. I don't think you'll see much of him. And then, some guys that have nothing to prove. Hyde and Poyer, those guys are a little bit banged up. They're
I think we'll see Davis. Roster.
I think you might see Davis, but if you do, it's going to be for a couple series. Again, these guys don't have anything to prove. It's just about getting your feet wet, getting ready for the new season. So I think we'll be looking at depth and competition. I think this is going to be a hard roster to make. So these guys, they got a job in front of them.
Absolutely. And a lot of fans hate on the preseason, but I'll tell you what, suffering through 20 years of below average football, that's what we look forward to, right? The guys who are going to take the torch, the potential, QB1s, the guys who are making the plays. It's always fun to evaluate and see these guys get a run at it, which kind of leads me to my next point. Being in the bottom half of the AFC for so long, is the hype train at an all-time high? I can't remember in my when I was young, but really in my adult life, you got Vegas odds, you got people pegging Allen as the MVP. Is the hype train? Have we met critical mass?
Absolutely. But with all due respect, it should be there. 2 years back to back losing to Kansas City. We're not going to harp on the 13 seconds, but you're 13 seconds away from meeting Cincinnati, and in my heart, I felt like we'd be winning that game. Our problem with Kansas City was we couldn't get to Mahomes. Everybody in the league could get to Joe Burrow. I just feel like that would have been a better matchup for us. I feel in my heart we would have won. And that's something we got to live with and move on. But this roster is probably the deepest and best roster in the NFL, arguably. And it only got better with guys like Von Miller and Quisenberry and some good depth pieces that come in and a new draft class. So, we're only building on something that was already very, very good. So I think at this point, another year, Josh Allen getting better. Now's the time. I think, prove that the hype is real. That's it, really.
Cody, you mentioned a lot of pieces, specifically players, but we got two noticeably new faces on the Buffalo Bills coaching staff, specifically on offense, which will bring us into our first segment. What do we expect out of these two guys? And obviously, I don't think we're going to see a lot in regards to Dorsey's hand, what he likes to call and whatnot. It's going to probably be vanilla, but that offensive line, I think we'll see. Resurrected. What's his name? Richie Incognito's career when he came here. So let's see round two. Hopefully we don't beat up any neighbors like we had that one run-in with Cromer. But, what do you see out of this coaching staff, specifically the changes on offense?
Yeah, just to touch on Cromer, I think that's probably a great hire from McDermott. I think when he was here, the Bills led the NFL in rushing the couple of years that he was here under Rex Ryan. Now, we're not going to do that. We don't run that style of offense. We're a pass-first offense. But I think we'll be a little bit more fluid, a little bit more dynamic with him coaching the offensive line. He does a little bit more gap schemes. Guys will pull. You touched on Richie Incognito. Having him out in space was great. You saw Mitch Morse was able to do that. He brought in the Saffold. He's able to do that. So, and we have a couple of young guys there with Spencer Brown and some guys that I'm sure can get out in space and move. So Cromer, he's gonna work to the players' strong points, and he's shown in this league. He's been around for forever that he can do that. So I'm confident that he will at least ignite the rushing game a little bit, and I think that's something that can really bring us to the next level. So I'm looking forward to Cromer. Now, touching on Dorsey real quick, the guy's just a winner. The guy was a winner in college. The guy's been a winner his whole life. You hear all the stories about him. I think we'll be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more fluid under him. You saw us bring in O.J. Howard. I think we'll run a little bit more jumbo. Guys will run 12, 13 personnel possibly. And then bringing in James Cook. So not just to touch on just the coaches, but the players that brought in with the coaches, I think is going to make a big difference and kind of adding to this offense and helping it along.
Ken Dorsey was a very interesting prospect throughout the hiring this offseason, because I know that's usually the first guy on people's list. You got a short list. You're gonna interview in-house, and then you didn't really hear much, and then it kind of unfolded that he was getting offers other places, and it seemed like the Bills had to pay a little bit. So to me, Josh Allen in what is this, year 5?
Yeah.
He clearly has the input. He's done that methodical growth as a leader of the team, and to get his input, you're willing to throw the big bucks at somebody who hasn't called plays. I think there goes the dogs. I think it has it says a lot, and I'm just curious to see if Allen meddles in, the play calling, because you don't really know the dynamic between Daboll. I mean, I just go back to his rookie year and second year where Daboll's chewing him out on the bench because he's just playing, he's throwing balls. I think it was in that game against Baltimore where he just threw a terrible interception, or no, it was New England when he threw like 3 picks and he's getting chewed out on the sidelines. I know him and Daboll had a good relationship, but I'm just curious to see if they take that to the next level. Are they willing to scrap the plays that don't work? Are they going to be on the, run the ball to keep the defense honest, or are they just going to go with what works? I'm very curious to see how he handles it. And, I think a lot of Bills fans and just fans of the NFL in general, I think they need to get ready to see a little bit of growing pains. Like, I think right out of the gate, people are expecting for the Bills to pick up where they left off, and that would be great. But when you got a lot of moving parts, that's not always the case. It's not really how you finish, or it's not how you start, it's how you finish. That being said, I mean, you look at this murders row schedule that the Bills are facing. I mean, they have multiple playoff teams in the first, 8 weeks of the season. So, I'm curious to see how they bounce back and when they hit adversity. Anything left on the coaching changes and what you're kind of expecting?
Not really. I mean, we saw Heath Farwell go down to, I think, Jacksonville. We didn't get much of an explanation for the 13 seconds here, but I think
it said enough.
It says enough when the coach isn't there anymore. So, Smiley being brought up from assistant to senior, that's fine. I don't really, I don't know how much that changes in that room there. I think, you already touched on it. It's Ken Dorsey and the difference that he's going to make. But having a quarterback or an ex-quarterback, I think that bond that those guys are going to have and being able to talk on a different level than say a Brian Daboll, who's not been in that, never been in a quarterback in the National Football League. I think it is going to make a difference, and not to underplay Daboll whatsoever. I mean, he did great things here, but if you look at his resume, he didn't really do great things in other places when they didn't have a great quarterback. So I don't want to shit on him at all. But at the end of the day, I'm excited. I'm excited for Dorsey. I really think that things are going to get a little bit more dynamic. So. It might take a little while, but I think in the end we'll be better for it.
I totally agree. So let's move on to some of the bubble discussions. I mean, you mentioned early on in the intro, this is going to be a tough team to make. There's only so many roster spots, obviously. And even if you do sneak some guys on the practice squad, I mean, Rashad Wildgoose last year, you lose them. You're going to lose draft picks. You can't sign them all, which – really quick to touch on it. I mean, these rookies, it's like you don't hear a bad thing about anybody. I mean, the most concern that I've heard was Elam kind of pressing, but everyone else is just kind of, turning heads. And which leads to the bubble. I mean, you got a slew of wide receivers, a mix of a lot of veterans in there. Guys like Tavon Austin. I mean, they're way down the depth chart. But is he going to return kicks? Is he going to return punts? That's a guy you may need to keep. Running back, you got two guys at the top of the list that kind of do the same thing. They don't play teams, and then you got a young guy like James Cook. But you also invested in Duke Johnson, so. It's going to be very interesting there. The offensive line, you got a whole bunch of names and a ton of guys who got plenty of run in this offseason because of the injuries. So, everyone's favorite Bobby Hart, kicking down inside and guard. Is he going to make the team over somebody like a Cody Ford? Obviously, the revamped defensive line. It seems like we do that every year, but let's get our cross our fingers and hope with the addition of Von Miller, everything's going to go swimmingly, and a bunch of D tackles. So you pick where you want to start. Let's break down some bubble positions.
I mean, I think we should probably start where you hit already, right? Bobby Hart and Cody Ford. I mean, Cody Ford, that's a guy. He's a fourth-year player now, former second-round pick. We've discussed him at length on this show, and not in good ways. I'd be lying if I said it's a make it or break it, but I feel like I might have said that three years in a row. Now, obviously not on the show, but how many times can we say that? And then you look at somebody like Bobby Hart. I mean, Bills fans, we couldn't get this guy out of town quick enough, and somehow he keeps finding his way back. So, what does it say about Cody Ford if you can't beat out Bobby Hart? Now, Bobby Hart coming out of college was projected to go to guard, and then ended up at right tackle with the Giants, and then went to Cincinnati, and now he's back here. So maybe, at the end of the day, you kick this guy inside where he's not, he doesn't have to have that elite athleticism that he just doesn't have, and maybe Cromer can kind of squeeze something out of him, some potential that maybe, and the same goes for Cody Ford. But I don't see both of those guys on this roster.
No.
Now, do you give the edge to Cody Ford because he was a Bills draft pick? At this point, he hasn't shown much.
Yeah, so, and I think that has run its course. Like you said, 4 years, and in my opinion, he's kind of blessed to still be on this team. I think they gave him a mulligan for the right tackle situation for, it went on too long. But right. as you were saying,
right. So I think, and I mean, the one thing that you could say about this coaching staff is they like flexible players. So both of those guys can kick out the right tackle. Now, can they do the job well? No, not really. I mean, God forbid we have them at right tackle. But so I think those kind of guys, they're on the same plane moving forward. I think if one of them makes it, then, I mean, good for that person. But if neither one of them was on this roster, I wouldn't lose sleep. But moving on past those guys, I think a big one that's coming up, and we all know it, is the punt god versus Matt Hawk. I mean, if Matt Araiza can have a strong preseason here and shows that he can maybe hold, I mean, if I'm the Bills, I'm giving every hold to the kid. We already know that Matt Hawk can hold. Give every hold you can to Matt Araiza and see if he can do the job. It's his job to lose, in my opinion. You couldn't get worse at punting last year in Buffalo weather than Matt Hawk. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I think that's one position where we can do better. We invested a draft pick. We just need the kid to go out there and take it from him, really, at the end of the day. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think you summed it up perfectly. You spent a draft pick on him. And we've been down this road before last year with another person who uses their foot and, or it's a kicker, Sorry, not last year, the year before. But, Hauschka was a guy where he was good, but you could tell he lost a little bit. I don't know if it was the injury or just age. But like you said, you got to give the guy a lot of opportunities. He seems like he's been picking up on the holding. You play sports with some guys where they pick up a bat, they can swing it. They never played it before. They go golfing. They're shooting par. He reminds me of a guy like that, especially the fact that he was kicking and punting. They basically and he's jacked. They got to tone him down in the work.
The kid's definitely an athlete.
Exactly, and there's guys out there who don't succumb to pressure, and he just seems like a cool cat. So I completely agree in the fact that it's really his job to lose. Having them splitting the holding, it's something I feel like you're almost paying service to the veteran at that point. But the coaching staff has to know that is what's going to separate the two. I mean, if he's a Corey Bojorquez, then you got some problems.
Right.
But clearly, Hawk is not the answer as a punter. And gone are the days where we have a kicking specialist, and certainly Bills Mafia does not want a holding specialist when, their team is on the brink of winning a championship. So you hit the nail right on the head. And honestly, I don't even really believe it's a competition unless Ariza blows it, because you don't waste draft picks. You can get guys that you're going to take a flyer on as a free agent, an unsigned rookie, but you're not gonna draft a guy who you don't believe can do it. And I'm sure they did their due diligence with the holding and kind of got the idea of the type of learner he is and how fast he can pick things up. Moving on to another bubble, which there's a lot of guys to talk about, and that's going to be at cornerback. Obviously, Trey White's injured, so we don't know what his status is. Is he going to end up on the PUP? Is that a roster spot that is going to open up because of that? I almost hope so. I mean, obviously, I want to see Trey back, but if he's got to take his time and allow to have a kid like Christian Benford to make the roster, or a Nick McLeod, I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, if we have a D-line that can get to the passer, then I'm a little less concerned. But how do you feel the bottom of the cornerback roster is going to shake up?
Oh, I can't say that I'm worried there. I'm actually pleasantly surprised from everything that I've heard from training camp. I mean, everything that we've heard about this Christian Benford is that, he's doing incredible. He's going up against the ones in some situations. You hear some stuff about Elam. Personally, I'm not too worried about that. He comes in as a first round pick there, and sometimes there's a lot of weight on your shoulders, and he needs some time to adjust, and that's okay.
And he's a man cover corner going to a predominantly zone cover scheme too, which you got to have time on task.
Right, and as you touched on before, if he's pressing, in training camp, then that's just something that he's just got to get his feet under him. I'm not worried about him. He's a physical corner. The one thing that I really picked up on, and I didn't know this, but looking at Benford today, and I kind of jumped into him and looked into his background. He's 6'1", 212 pounds. So if this guy can shake out, that's like a Stephon Gilmore. That's a big corner. I mean, Elam, again, he's another guy, 6'1", about 190 pounds. So these are big corners. If we can find a diamond in the rough like a Benford, and we've seen in the past, McDermott knows how to coach these guys up. I'm personally not worried about the secondary. I think we still have the best, one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Once those safeties get back in the lineup and kind of help those kids out, whether Trey White is ready week 1, you hope he is, playing the Rams. But if he's got to sit for a week or two, Dane Jackson, he did solid, didn't give up a touchdown in Trey White's stead last year. Now, I think you felt it when we played Kansas City. If Trey White's on the field, not saying we win that football game, but he adds a dimension that we didn't have, and that's, a shutdown corner. So if either one of these guys, works out, Elam or, let's just say Elam didn't work out and Benford stepped up, you're in a pretty good position there with Dane Jackson, Benford, Trey White. You just got Saron Neal on another deal. You got Taron Johnson. You got Cam Lewis is shown out. I think Cam Lewis is a player that you have to watch out for. They might make this roster.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, there's guys on this roster who have been on the bubble and have made plays when they actually have been inserted into the starting lineup. The Dane Jacksons, the Cam Lewis, they can play. I mean,
Right.
they're no slouches. They know the defense. But then you get the Nick McLeods who makes play. I mean, this is the second year in a row where I've heard his name in preseason just about every week. The cool thing about him is it seems like they're transitioning him towards safety. Does that mean are we going to carry 5 and he's just your flex guy? Maybe he doesn't dress, but you lose a guy at either position. He's somebody who can insert right in there. We still don't know if Poyer. I know they say Poyer is going to be ready for the opener, but elbow injuries are tough. So I'm more intrigued, and I don't like letting talented kids go, but we just rattled off 4 or 5 guys, and I believe last year we only rocked 4 cornerbacks all season. Yeah. Obviously, you're going to be able to put some guys on the practice squad, but if they show up in games like tomorrow, you can only keep them there for so long. And just by being a top-notch organization, the game film on them goes that much further because you're coming. It's like taking a guy from Alabama. You may not know everything about him, but he's on Alabama, so he's right. Doing something right,
Right.
But yeah, the secondary's loaded. And then before we move on, I just kind of want to talk about the defensive tackle spot. We got a lot of new guys here, and obviously Ed Oliver. He's by all reports and accounts, he's set to really go over the hump as a good player to a great player. The return of Jordan Phillips. He's a real polarizing player because I know he's got a lot of fans, and then he also has a lot of detractors who feel his big year in Buffalo was a byproduct of other people's play. But still, he's a guy who's made money. He's made plays. And then you got a guy like Tim Settle and Daquan Jones. These are big guys. These are the space eater guys that we've been looking for. And the guy who we shall not name, who no longer is on this roster, let's see if they can fill in and really take the bull by the horns. But you got a guy who's on a Settle, who's buried on a depth chart of first round draft picks. So you got a lot of good guys down there. Who do you see making the roster from the defensive tackle spot?
Well, Tim Settle is a guy that. Like you mentioned, buried behind first rounders in Washington. When that signing came across, I was actually a little excited. I did get a chance to see him play a little bit. He's a name that I followed, and if I had to pick one position group on this team that I'm excited about, it would probably be the defensive line. Not just the tackle position, but the end position. I know you asked about the tackle, but just to jump to the end for a second, you have Shaq Lawson right now. Possibly as a bubble player, by the way, as your 4th or 5th defensive end. So where this team has come, I think, in a couple of years, has been pretty significant. But as far as what you asked me, Daquan Jones, a 9-year vet, he's going to be on his team. Tim Settle, he'll be on his team. And then the player I'm looking forward to the most is Ed Oliver. I tell you what, he's the player I look forward to the most on either side of the ball. I think this is the year that he jumps to being elite. A lot of people, including myself, coming out of the draft, I was thinking Aaron Donald. The body type is very similar. The trajectory hasn't been the same. Aaron Donald is a generational player, future Hall of Famer. But if Ed Oliver...
if you're 300 pounds and you have an 8-pack,
the guy's a freak. But I think that you'll see Ed Oliver kind of turn into a freak this year. And you put a guy like Von Miller next to him, I think it's going to be a fun year watching that defensive line. I really am excited. And then you have other players that, like AJ Epinesa that can jump inside. So we're very deep there. I'm curious to see how many we keep. And Jordan Phillips. We touched on Jordan Phillips. That's a guy that came over. He was great when he was here. Got everybody hyped. I enjoyed him. I enjoyed him thoroughly when he was here. I'm one of those guys that's really rooting for him. From what I've heard, he came into camp in extremely
Great
good shape. Yeah, and I've heard people say that he's good. He's ready for a career year. He seems to want to be here, and this is the place that he wants to be, and that may go a long way. You're playing for your brothers, the guys next to you. That can really up your game. I'm excited for this group. I really am. I don't really know who you can. A guy like Eli Anku, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for him. He might end up on a practice squad. When he jumped up on the active roster, he made some plays. He's a good depth piece. It's going to be hard for him to make this 53-man roster.
I think the biggest difference is we're talking about some guys who, like you said, if things go the right way, they may be able to perform. But these are guys who are going to be on the second and third wave of this defensive line,
right,
which is different. Last year we're relying on guys who may not have the track record or may be over the hump in age and production. We're relying on them to make plays. And now, it seems to be those are the guys who are fighting to make the roster. And I really liked what you said about Ed Oliver. The last thing I'll mention is Ed Oliver is an emotional guy, but have you seen this guy get into so many altercations on the field? To me, that's exactly what it is. It tells me it's all coming together, and he's taking names and kicking ass. So it's all, and like you said, with having a guy like Von Miller, even if they're opposite sides of the field, that to me that's even better, because what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So there's a lot of bubble guys. There's probably a handful. We didn't even touch the wide receivers, but let's keep it going. Move on to training camp. A lot of things happen in training camp. Obviously, these bubble battles are what incite the conversation. But like we mentioned before, there's a lot of fights, and the intensity has been ratcheted up. But Sean McDermott's a guy who has the finger on the pulse. He's going to let it go to the line as close to that line as he possibly can before reining everybody back in and, not doing anything stupid. Outside of that, what are your overall thoughts of this preseason? Neither of us were able to go, but, there's a lot of good reporters out there who give solid updates. What are your thoughts?
Right. The only concern I would see is, you've heard a lot of mixed reviews of Josh Allen. Now, I don't look too much into it. In my opinion, he's a gamer. He's a guy that, when the bright lights come on, he's going to be up in his game. So that would be the one thing that I've heard that's kind of, one day is up, one day is down. But, I kind of scratch that and move on. The one area of concern I do have is the offensive line and just not being able to get guys on the field together, whether it's major injuries or Spencer Brown coming off back surgery. I'm really looking forward to him jumping up his play from year one to year two. I mean, the guy's a physical freak. So, I'm just hoping those guys can get back and get some reps in his preseason. So, coming out of training camp, I don't know how many days he got personally. 2 or 3 from what I've heard. I could be mistaken there. But, other than that, a couple guys like Dane Jackson, someone who I think is probably going to vault himself into at least a top 20 receiver this year. So, in the preseason, I'm looking more for that depth going forward. I think our starting lineups are kind of already set, give or take 1 or 2 guys, maybe surprises and God forbid injuries. But other than that, I think that, everything that we've heard is for the most part good.
Yeah, I mean, it is concerning when you're completely through camp and you just got your projected 5 together. That's bad at any position group, but when they're in charge of protecting your most valuable asset, it's definitely got you worried. Luckily, obviously Allen is a guy who does well under pressure, is able to escape. But that being said, again, we talked about Cromer. if you're not available, how are you going to get better? You can be in the meetings, you can throw on a red jersey and do some walkthroughs, but I'm curious to see tomorrow what this offensive line brings to the table, specifically in the run game. Just because, like you mentioned, I'm looking for at the very least, run blocking should be a little bit more straightforward than pass protection. So hopefully they can hit the ground running in that area. For me, though, the biggest thing that stuck out is the wide receiver, specifically Gabe Davis. Another guy who's in the Ed Oliver boat. Everyone's looking for him to take that next big step. Everyone talks about the physique, putting on the muscle. Obviously, his last game on a football field was just, pretty historic. It was something that I certainly wasn't expecting, but he went off, and that doesn't happen by accident. So having him be a viable number 2, which I know everyone was hoping for, but we weren't sure going into last season, and having his rep count either remain the same or go down a little bit, it was a little concerning. But like you said, when the lights go on, he's a gamer. And he's always, the one thing that he brings to the game since day one was that sideline just awareness. It's just ridiculous. Every week.
Swag.
Every week.
Incredible.
And it's Allen on the run, left to right, doesn't matter. He's there for those catches. But the big name is Isaiah Mckenzie. Obviously, he had, I wouldn't call it a roller coaster type year last year, but it didn't start off that well. He was kind of given the job for punt and kick return. That didn't go as planned. But just like any good athlete, when he was at his lowest depth, he pulled himself out of there. I mean, you had that New England game where he was crucial. So talk a little bit about what you see out of Isaiah Mckenzie. I know a lot was brought on. Well, he didn't have pads on, and then the pads came on, and he kept performing. How do you think that's going to shake out with Mckenzie when you brought in some tough competition to try to take that slot receiver or slot position away from him?
Yeah, we heard all offseason about Jamison Crowder and what he was going to bring to this offense, and unfortunately for Jamison, fortunately for Isaiah Mckenzie, he's been a little bit nicked up. He's only gotten back recently, so that's given Mckenzie some time to shine. You saw what he did last year against the Patriots. I mean, when the guy gets playing time, he showed up. He's got incredible hands. We talked about gamers. He's another one of these guys that just, when he suits up, he seems to really turn it on. He's definitely earned the right to have that job, to start at that position. I think, Crowder, we know what he can do. The yards after catch, he was very good. He might have been arguably the best Jets wide receiver. So, that's going to bring in that much needed competition. But Mckenzie, this is his fourth year with Buffalo?
I think it's his 5th. I think he was here with Allen. I know he's the longest tenured receiver with Allen.
Wow. I do remember they brought him in midseason with the Broncos, or I think. I'm not quite sure. But you see, if you follow this guy in any kind of social media, the guy works so hard in the offseason, working on his body, working on technique, working on catching the football. You could say the same thing about Gabe Davis. These guys are workaholics. These guys are workhorses. And those are the guys that we need on the football field. And I think it kind of it goes along with Josh Allen. These guys are like that blue collar type that just put the work in and show up, and they have a different kind of mean streak on game day. He brings something that you lose with Cole Beasley. He got to learn under Cole Beasley, and if it doesn't work out, I don't see Jamison Crowder not making this roster. I think he'll be there at the end of the day. So I'm looking forward to those guys. I'm looking forward to seeing that room. Really, it's a talented room. It's just the back end of it that's going to be a challenge. A guy for like Kumaro or Hodgins now that you're finally seeing healthy. I think you might have a little bit of a battle there to see if one of these guys can make the football team. But But
And we didn't even
that's
mention Shakir,
yeah,
draft pick.
that's another guy. I mean, listen, they're not going to cut him. I mean,
No.
even he's a draft pick. The Bills don't do that. I mean, not that he has to worry about that because the guy's showing out. But yeah, I mean, right now, one of these guys might end up a day 3 trade. A day 3 pick at the end of preseason here. They're stacked at a lot of these spots, and unlike years past, it's hard to call a few of these.
Yeah, and you're right that they are stacked. And the thing that is the most encouraging is if you look at how many times Buffalo targets wide receivers, they're first in the league. How many yards the wide receiver has per team, first in the league by like 400 yards. So Allen likes throwing to wide receivers. So when you hear the Odell Beckham chatter, it's for a reason. I mean, obviously he's not going to be ready till later in the year, but see, it's a long season. People get hurt.
Yeah.
You need to keep that stable full. I know when we had Cole Beasley and we were going into the draft, a lot of people were talking about not taking wide receiver. In my opinion, this team needs to draft a wide receiver just about every year. You got to keep that stable fresh and full because, you got Diggs locked down. Gabe Davis is coming up to that contract talk. You never know what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
just keep that stable full. And before we kind of move on to our closing comments, the last guy I wanted to talk about is a little bit of a receiver himself, and that's James Cook. What have you seen or heard from him, and what do you expect to see from him, whether it's tomorrow or just this season in general?
As far as tomorrow, I don't know how much we see him play. There's a couple of guys behind him. I think that'll get a little bit more burn, but I think he will be out there. I'm excited. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm excited. This is a guy that brings a dynamic that we don't have on the team right now. Singletary, Moss, those guys, they have their roles on the team, but here's a guy that, was probably the best pass catching running back that came out in the draft. If he's anything like his brother, I mean, his brother's a top 3 running back. He's going to bring that element that we didn't have really last year, or probably haven't had since LaShawn McCoy was on the team. And that's being able to run those wheel routes. And Singletary did have a few, but, Singletary's not a burner.
I feel like Singletary had to learn how to catch the ball here. Like he's never done it in his career prior.
Right. So you have a guy that's coming in that's a natural pass catcher with soft hands. It just brings another element. We spoke about Ken Dorsey having an ability to kind of open up the playbook more, and this is another guy that's going to help you open the playbook. It's going to be a guy that defense are going to have to worry about, the speed element that we don't have on the field last year, unless you had, I can't even remember the third or fourth running back that went to the Giants. Can't even remember his name.
Brees Hall.
No, Brees Hall's the Jets. The Jets.
Oh, so the Giants. Sorry, I thought I was ready for that. Who went to the Giants? You said
it was the Bills' like 4th running back last year that got benched a couple times. He's on the Giants now. He went with Dable.
From the 49ers?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. The point I'm trying to make is James Cook brings that speed element that is lacking.
Yeah. Clearly it was lacking since we can't even remember his damn name.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I loved what you brought up about having Ken Dorsey, because this is a guy where he does. There we go. Thank you, Matthew. Chat always coming in, Matthew.
Matt Breida. Thank you.
I was gonna say Mostert, but Mostert's actually pretty good. So
Dolphins, I think now.
yeah. But yeah, I like he's a guy, a positionless guy. Everyone wanted, not everybody, but a lot of people who were fine drafting a first round running back wanted Travis Etienne last year. And I see while James Cook didn't have the run because he was in such a dominant team and a crowded backfield, and he doesn't really have that size, but the same type where I remember last year hearing about Etienne in the slot a lot, and I could see them using James Cook in that role. And then even taking it a step further, if Mckenzie's going to be out there as a route runner, not a gadget guy, a bona fide number 3 receiver, James Cook in that gadget role. I'm sure the possibilities are endless with him. So I completely agree. If you saw a lot in this draft where there was a lot of tendency breakers for just the archetype. I mean, everybody wanted that big corner, fast man corner. We got one. Everybody wanted that change of speed running back who can kind of do it all. We got it. So, Shakir, he reminds me a little bit of a Stephon Diggs, but even more so a Robert Woods, another guy who you could put him anywhere and ask him to do anything. And the good news is we don't need them to perform right now. How many years have we gone by where we needed the guys to step in and be that guy right away, where now if they do great, it's a plus, but
right.
We're not banking on these young kids to make a big splash. Outside there's a lot on Elam's plate, but I think we'll be fine. He's got tons of veteran leadership behind him, and this defense is totally fine with not the most talented players out there, and he'll catch on once everything slows down. Yeah. So to close the show out, give me one player that you're looking forward to watching tomorrow, and why.
If I'm knocking it down to one, this actually might be pretty pathetic, but I think it's actually Matt Ariza, the punt guy.
Yes, it's all right. It's all good.
I really want to see one of these booming 75-yard punts. And I don't want to go off and say I'm looking, you said one guy, but, we touched on Christian Benford, a couple of these guys that are in the secondary that if they can show out and kind of shut down some of these, they might not be first stringers or second, third stringers. That's great depth for us. And then just a couple other guys like an AJ Epinesa or Boogie Basham. I want to see some progress there, some development. So, but if I pick one, it's going to be Matt Ariza.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we don't see a lot of them, but maybe towards the end of the game. I definitely want to see what it looks like when he puts that ball on the ground. We're all going to be looking at the laces. I know we're all laces out, Marino. But for me, it's going to be the two young linebackers that we drafted, Terrell Bernard, who we didn't mention, and Balin Spector. Terrell Bernard seems like a prototypical Matt Milano backup. I think we finally have two backups who are not, we're not gone are the days of the Klein where he's going to have to play Will and Mike. Clearly that was not a good solution. But having Dotson be Tremaine's backup primarily, and having a guy like Bernard being Milano's backup is something that I look forward to because their skill sets are different. And then the Balin Spector is probably going to get a lot of run this preseason, and he just seems like a guy that at Clemson he was always around the ball. He doesn't have that prototypical size. The athleticism is there, but he just seems like one of those guys that overperforms, and he's somebody who can, be a replacement for a Tyler Medikevich. Can he be that break glass in case of emergency linebacker, but really dominate on special teams? So those are two guys that I'm really going to be looking out for. Obviously, we're going to keep our eyes on everything, but your eyes can only go to one spot when that ball's snapped. Not that it matters, but just give us a score prediction.
I wrote down a couple here, and for two reasons. For backups, we got Nick Foles and Sam Erlinger, and then we got Case Keenum and Matt Barkley. Now, we know Nick Foles and Case Keenum don't really have much to prove in this league. So I'm thinking we're going to get 3/4 of Sam Erlinger, I don't know, University of Texas a couple years ago, and Matt Barkley. So I'm going to go with Matt Barkley, Bills 27, Colts 24.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. Not that it matters, but let's go with something weird. Let's say a 20 26-19 Bills.
Okay.
a lot of weird things happening. But yeah, that does it for the show. It's been great chatting with you. Herm will be back. He's just he's got a vet week this this time around. You know, he's earned it.
He doesn't need the preseason. You know.
No, he doesn't.
We need the
man,
preseason. Get the kinks out.
The minute I got him on the microphone, he was a natural. So yes, Herm will be back with us. Don't you worry. But as always, you know, like, share, subscribe. It helps get the views up and the news out. So that seems to do it. Thank you for joining us on the Friday Night Forecast, and we'll see you next week. Let's go Bills.
Go Bills.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming to rep the East. Buffalo bat with a vengeance, we resurrected the team, man, we dangerous. Watch for these horns, they lacerate and cut. We don't play no game while we play this game, no, I play in us. You know what it's about, you made me wanna shout. They said to take it now, we took another route. Deuces to the drought, play through all the doubters, finger pointing and laughing. The ones that was talking that trash are the same ones circling wagons, we ain't having it. Dominate divisions ever since we put the L in it. Knocks the competition out the stadium like hammer fist. Stephon Diggs a grave and he pays respects to the cornerbacks that can't cover quickness, then he catches it. In 1995 to 2020, break the streak. Kept the faith in every season for the team, cause I believe. Taught me no matter how many times you're down, do not accept defeat. Feel like number 17. You got me feeling like I'm